Black people, we have to fight. Egungu, you see us. Ogu, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Dandara, you see us. Ogu, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Makandalo, you see us. Ogu, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Nana John, Henry Clark, you see us.
We have to fight. Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Yansatewa, you see us. We have to fight.
Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Marcus Garvey, you see us. We have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Nana Zumbio, you see us. We have to fight.
Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Nana Hannibal, you see us. Ogu, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Ancestors, you see us. We have to fight. Let's go fight.
We have to have the courage to construct our own reality. And that's what Garvey was talking about. Because he said he looked around, he didn't see what he thought should be there, and so what did he do? He didn't get depressed about it. He didn't get defeated about it. He said, I'm gonna build the government that we need to have. Ooh. Where do you get that kind of boldness from? So we gotta go all the way back to Garvey, who said he would come again. He said, he would be here with us, no matter how long it took. And I'm telling you that the way he comes back is in our work. Not honoring him in words, pomp and all of that stuff, but honoring him through doing what he did. How many of us have the courage to do that? The man took on the world for us and in our name. And then we come to Sodai. And in this presentation of the paradigm, I'm going to make this like what it is we want to reach. So Sodai is translated clear word in Dogana language. And I use it to mean that here we gain understanding. This is sight with understanding. And it is seeing beyond what just we think we see with this physical thing. It's seeing beyond that. And so we gain vision, because that's what vision is. With vision, you've got to be able to use the imagination informed by the African spirit. And Brother Amos, who I work very closely with, was a good friend of mine. He taught me, and he would talk about imagination. Image a nation. Do you see? But that's got to be part of vision. To be a visionary, you got to see beyond this box here. You got to see beyond the ma'afa. You got to see what is it that our people rightfully should have, and that's what Garvey did. Garvey had a vision.
All of the Abosun, all of the Orisha, all of the Loa, all of the good spirits that will be happening to the people of family. And I'm talking about the Papalepa Bedes, Garcia Bedes, Kapu Bedes, Papalepa Bedes, Ogu Bedes, Ipatiki Bedes, Ipalodo Bedes, Ogufe, Ogufra Bedes, Zindoko Bedes, Ekripeda Bedes, Oya Bedes, Osu Bedes, Ogun Bedes, Eyamoja Bedes, Oloku Bedes, Ogula Bedes, Akwesi Mrosa Bedes, Abusumo Etiti, Nanapon, Abusumo Benku, Nelipa, Medese, all Abusumo that in the north, the south, right and left, where they say Yasamu, Samitra Papa, Mekamuni, Nanano Patamuni, Namumra, Nanano Pata, one of you are for all of them, Medese, come and see some of this, Nanano, because we call all of those things who have fought on behalf of African people, Nanano Patamuni, Namumra, all of those spirits who have agreed to help move African people forward, Yasamu, Namumra. We cover all of our ancestors, both our family, our community, and our national ancestors. At this time, can you please call out our ancestors?
Willie Mandela, Fela and Nicola Paputi.
All of those ancestors who have committed themselves to African people, all of those ancestors who have committed themselves to family building, community building, and nation building, all of those ancestors who shed their own blood on behalf of the African people. All of those ancestors who committed their time, who committed their minds, their spirits, their bodies to continue to open the way for African people to be free, to have power, to be able to safeguard our existence and continue development. If I call one of you, I call all of you. Nana no Pacho be boneni. Ayoko Kuku Queen. Nana no Pacho, there's nothing bad here. It is me, Okonko Queen. You said that was a part of your mind. You say thank you for what you have done for us. Nana no, you said that was in your mother mind. You say thank you for what you will do for us. Nana no, Islam said, and then that part. We ask that today be a good day. Islam said today be a day where African people are able to come together on behalf of African people. Islam, we ask that today be a day where no alien thoughts, no alien intellect or emotion or spirit are able to come in our space. We ask that today be a day where we concentrate a space where we're able to work on behalf of African people only. We ask we're able to work on behalf of those who have came before us, those who are here now with us, and those who will come after us. I don't know. We ask that everything that happens today may go well. We ask that we will not meet anything negative on this road. We ask that if there's any challenges here today, we ask that if you are not able to remove those challenges for us, if you want us to face those challenges, we ask that you give us the strength, we ask that you give us the power, the humility, the clarity, the wisdom, and all of those things that are necessary for us to be victorious in the face of all of those challenges. And I know, yes, some are hoarding, yes, some will seek, yes, some will tuli, yes, some will answer, yes, some will be here to be a between the economy, and we have we ask you for all those things that we need to be victorious in the face of our destiny and our life as African people. And I don't know, Patrick, you said Dawasi, that's Nanano.
And I'm worthy to be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kozai, Muzimu, Mokolo, we give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Making sure I can be heard right about now. Giving thanks for all those who are locked on to Kimbunga Media right about now. Yes, indeed, we are discussing the Windrush Fallacy on this, the 12th of the month. They call August, we call Mosiah, and so it is the month of Mosiah. So we greet you. Mosiah lives and Garvey lives. All praise is due to the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters, we're there. And I see Elder Baba Gus John is with us. We're still awaiting the arrival of Elder Cecil Gutsmore, but we'll bring you Baba Gus John very, very shortly. So greetings and welcome, brothers and sisters. Greetings and welcome. We appreciate your presence right about now. I want to make sure hit the like button as come through. Yes, indeed, hit the like button. You know what I'm saying? Spread this Pan-African energy all over the social media sphere. And as well as that, brothers and sisters, please feel free to share the link far and wide. Make the people know that Shakara is live right about now. I'm going to be speaking to Elder Baba Gus John and Elder Baba Cecil Guts Moore. Yes, indeed. It's going to be a beautiful an important and incisive conversation, kings and queens, because you know, so when we talk about them thing, yeah, we're not ramp at all. This is what you call a no joke business conversation, a no joke business conversation. And so before I bring on Baba Gus John, let me remind you of the drums of Mosiah. Yes, indeed, the drums of Mosiah, taking place on the birthday of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, which is this coming Monday, the 17th of Mosiah. We're going to be licking some drum in Brixton Square. We're going to take over Brixton Square for a couple of hours, kings and queens. So shout out to Uncle Ashaba, the entire African Revolution. Shout out to the Sangoma drummers. And everybody else that's gonna come through. Like it's a bring your drum and come occasion. Yeah, just bring your drum and come. You know what I'm saying? All levels and abilities are able. The most important thing is that you come with the right vibration. And we're just gonna take over Brixton for a couple of hours and celebrate the birthday of the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So do come true. Our Kibble.org for more information. Right, brothers and sisters. Right. Without further ado, we are here, as I said, to discuss the Windrush Fallacy. Baba Gus John, okay, he's there but not there, so I'm gonna wait for him to come back. Oh, he's here. Okay, so I'm gonna bring him through in 30 seconds, kings and queens. Let me just hail up the people in the chat. Big up, I don't know how to spell how to pronounce the rest of this. That's something about. It says Thomas. Big up, I believe that is Mama Miriam. Women know, so big up Mama Miriam inside, and I believe Mama Miriam, yes indeed, left a super chat. Apologies, kings and queens. I'm very terrible at reading super chats, you know. So I apologize. Melaman is in the building from across the waters. Set Imhotep is in the building from across the waters. Big up to Kevin, aka Mr. K. And all of the silent listeners, viewers, Jadorian, Dea, you know what I mean, and all the silent listeners and viewers. Big up the haters as well, because we know so we have some haters, especially when we discuss a topic like this, you know what I'm saying, you know. But you know, I hope the haters will you know, will be humble enough to take in some education and some learning. Brothers and sisters, we're going to be discussing the Windrush Fallacy. And this is a very important conversation because there's been some high profile discussion among my generations even below my own, in terms of the narrative and the history of the sojourn of Black people in the UK. And it has been apparent to me for some time that a serious mass education is required to set the record straight, because there are a lot of historical inaccuracies in the popular narrative as it is developing. And as always, those historical inaccuracies serve certain political interests. And this is something that I've been concerned about for a very, very long time, and quietly making my own assessments and saying certain things in certain places. And then I turned around 2 times, and Elder Baba Gus John was hot on the issue and making all of the arguments that I was making and more better than I could make them, brothers and sisters, with all the years of his experience and his dedication to Black people, African people in this country, backing him up. And so I thought he was the perfect individual to bring forward for a discussion such as this, and also Elder Baba Cecil Gutsmore as well. So without further ado, let me bring forward to you for the first time live on Kimbunga Media, Baba Gus John. Greetings and welcome, Baba Gus.
Greetings, my good brother. Greetings. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well, Baba. You have featured on Kimbunga Media before, but you haven't been with us live before. We've featured a presentation of yours. We've even had a libation of yours. We had your libation from last year at the War Memorial, and not the year before that, but the year before that, when you poured libation at the War Memorial. We featured that on this channel a couple of times. So you're no stranger to our audience, but this is the first time you're joining us live. So let me give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. I like to give the first time as an opportunity to introduce themselves for those who may not be aware of who you are, because as we say, everybody ought to know. So who is Baba Gus John?
Okay, brothers and sisters, I am who is Gus John exactly? I am a Grenadian who lived in England for far too long. I am a semi-retired professor of education. Oh, bless you. Thanks. That's so much better. Some of you will remember that a couple of decades or so ago, I was the Director of Education and Leisure in the London Borough of Hackney, having worked before that with the Inner London Education Authority. I am a writer, I am a social analyst, I am a provocateur, I am a person who regularly kicks the ass of the establishment and all of that stuff. So I have 62 years of activism experience in this country. Started when I was a student of theology in the city of Oxford, working with car workers, men mainly, and hospital workers, nurses, and hospital staff in the 2 teaching hospitals at the University of Oxford. And we started the first Black supplementary school in Oxford in 1966, in Cowley Road, in East Oxford. In 1999, with a couple of other people, I started a small charity, which was very important then. It had its 25th birthday last year. And it was called the Communities Empowerment Network. And we basically devoted ourselves to providing advocacy and representation for Black children excluded from schools and their parents' families. It wouldn't surprise you to hear that most of them were Black boys. And throughout the 25 years, we dealt with between 500 and 1,000 school exclusions every year of mainly Caribbean boys. More recently, children of mixed heritage, one Caribbean parent and one English white parent. The exclusion rate amongst them was almost equivalent, if not surpassing, that of Black Caribbean boys. So my career really has been in political activism, academia, and providing support for young people in various forms of difficulties with the police or the criminal justice system.
Right. Giving thanks, Baba Gus. I should also just add to that Baba Gus is also Baba Omobowale, as an Isheshe or an Ifa priest. And we are thankful for you, Baba, because you were able to lead us in our Ocean River ritual on Omajide Sunday just gone. And so we give thanks for all of the, yes, indeed, a beautiful day. And so we give thanks for all of your many acts of service. Brothers and sisters, we are still awaiting the arrival of Baba Cecil Gutsmore. I'm trying to get through to him myself. If anybody's locked on, I know some of you have Baba Cecil's contact, so let's give him a nudge and see if everything bless. And I'll do the same on my side as well. In the meantime, between time, let us get into our topic for this evening. Elder Gus, the Windrush narrative is one that is ever popular among our people. And I guess we should probably start with the terminology itself, the terminology Windrush Generation. And from the time this terminology became popular, I've always been uncomfortable with it. I was fine with it in terms of its reference to a period of time and an event. But when I saw how it was being employed to refer to a generation of my elders, my grandparents, I was always uncomfortable with it. And my uncomfortability stemmed from the idea that I didn't like the fact that a generation of our people, our elders, especially based upon what they experienced, were being named as though it was an honor after a colonial ship, a British colonial ship. And oftentimes, when we say Windrush, we leave out the word empire. The
right.
entire name
That's
of
right.
the ship is the SS Empire Windrush. Yeah. So I think that pains to explain this. You have also challenged this, and in your recent piece, the dystopian future of the Windrush, you use a term, the bizarrely named Windrush Generation. So please explain for our audience, just on the terminology itself, why you refer to it as a bizarrely named moniker for our elders or your generation as it stands.
All right. So let me begin somewhere near the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The Empire Windrush was the ship that brought just over 1,000 people to Tilbury Docks in East London in 1948. It arrived there on June the 21st. The people disembarked on June the 22nd, which is why they have this Windrush Day on June the 22nd, 1948. The ship brought back mainly ex-service personnel, people who had been in the army between 1939 and 1945, and then returned to the Caribbean after demob. By their own admission, particularly Samuel King, who was the architect of all of this Windrush business, they found the conditions in Jamaica too challenging. Poverty, penury, really, a very stringent colonial system, which was more or less a continuation of the conditions of enslavement that they and their parents of that generation had been experiencing. So they came to this country ready to escape those conditions. So part of the myth is that, we were all over there enjoying our lives, getting on with business, and Britain called and we came. In fact, only a couple of days ago, I saw a book written by Stephen Reeves called You Called, We Came, and basically bigging up the people who came to live in Britain and find work in Britain after the Second World War. Now, Arthur Torrington of the Windrush Foundation, claims that Sam King wanted the name Windrush Generation to apply only to those people who had come on that boat in June 1948. The Home Office, in the middle of that scandal, when they were denying our elders housing and medicines and so on and so forth, and in fact, they managed to manslaughter some 70 of them, elders who had lived in this country, some of them since they were in their teens. The Home Office decided that those people who came between 1948 and 1971 should be referred to as the Windrush Generation. 1973. Why 1973? Because in 1971, the government passed some of the most stringent immigration legislation to prevent people like us, who had a right to come here because we were British citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, to prevent us having free movement to come here.
Right.
In 1962, just before they brought in the Commonwealth Immigrants Act, the number of people who had come here had risen 20-fold. So there was a lot of agitation in the country as a result of that. There was a lot of agitation when the Kenyan Asian crisis happened and people came here in 65, and then Idi Amin expelled them from Uganda. They came in 68. So by that time, the population, the former colonial population of this country was growing apace. So that in 1971, the government decided enough was enough. They were going to limit the number of black people, and by black, I mean black, Asian, all of those who were colonized. And they determined that they would make that period, 1948 to 1973, the period when the so-called Windrush generation came, right? So, but the fact of the matter is, and that gets straight to your point, my brother, that boat only made one trip. It didn't bring, your father, it didn't bring my father, it didn't bring that generation to this country. One trip, right? But they decided to keep the name Windrush and group everybody under that name, even those born after 1973. I have heard people like yourselves referred to as second and third generation Windrush. Now, what madness is that? Complete foolishness. Yeah. So my point is that it's an aberration. It's mythologizing, and it suits the British to do that, because you bring people here, you brutalize them, you have systemic racist structures and institutions pitted against them, from the police, the criminal justice system, the courts, the housing services, etc. And then they come and say, we are so glad to be here because we came to rebuild Britain, and give us a medal for that. I mean, which state would not embrace that kind of nonsense? So it suits them to give whatever little bits of money they give every year to these people to go and enjoy themselves and have curry goat and rum punch, and to celebrate the fact that they came to rebuild Britain. Nobody talks about reparations in that narrative. Nobody talks about the overrepresentation of black people in the criminal justice system. Nobody talks about what the schools are doing to our children. Nobody talks about the fact that there are more unemployed young black people in the population pro rata than anybody else. And in spite of all of that and everything else that's going on, they're murdering our people, police, and calling it deaths in custody. In spite of all of that, you have these unreconstructed Negroes running around the place talking about, we came to we answered the call and we came to rebuild Britain, etc. In other words, the word resistance doesn't enter the vocabulary. The word rebellion doesn't enter the vocabulary. Nor does the word reparatory justice. You don't hear that at all in that Windrush narrative.
Important points, Baba. Just to emphasize what it is that you're saying. Bear in mind that in 1948, brothers and sisters, we're dealing with basically a colonial era. There were no nations, save for Haiti, in the Caribbean that were independent, right? So most of this is taking place under the formal colonization of our nations in the Caribbean. Yeah, from one side Jamaica and the other side Antigua. Jamaica doesn't become independent up until 1962, and Antigua doesn't become independent up until 1981. Yes, all right. So throughout this period, we're dealing with colonization, which is the mass underdevelopment of our nations in the Caribbean. And to the extent that coming to Britain represented an opportunity, that opportunity was principally because Britain had so thoroughly underdeveloped the nations of the Caribbean so as to make them unlivable, yes, for a significant proportion of the population, and incentivize, in that sense, the leaving based upon its propaganda of the mother country. But one One.
Can I just add something to that, my brother, very quickly?
You may, Baba, but 1 second, because Elder Cecil is with us now. So let me just bring him through, and I'll bring you back to add what you just want to add. So greetings, Baba Cecil Gutsmore.
Greetings to you, my brother, and to you,
Okay,
comrade.
Greetings.
Yes, we can hear you. It's slightly choppy, but we can hear you. So I'll come to you. Thank you for joining us, Elder Cecil. I'll come to you shortly. I'm just gonna give Baba Gus the opportunity to add something to what I've just said.
Yes. In the context of what you were just describing, that bit of history, it's important to note that much of that discussion is centered around labor, right?
Yes.
Labor, economy, wages, people's ability to subsist in the rather challenging economic conditions that the colonialists had left when they dug up. When, in fact, they had not even left in 1948 when people started coming here. The first lot being on this Windrush boat. The point I'm making is this: throughout our history in the Caribbean, post-slavery, there was massive movements of labor. My own father worked in the oil fields of Trinidad and Tobago in South Trinidad. My uncle worked on the Panama Canal. My father then went to Aruba and worked in oil refining in Curacao, in Aruba, in the Dutch West Indies. Some of other relatives went to Curacao, just next door. And people regularly left Jamaica, St. Vincent, wherever, and went as fruit pickers to the United States. So the masses of people went as seasonal labor to the US every year. I had two uncles, both passed on now, who left Grenada to go and work in Guyana. They were dredging minerals in the Demerara and the Essequibo rivers. They never came back to Grenada. So the point I'm trying to make is this notion that somehow or other migration and migration for work was something that hadn't happened till 1948 and the Windrush is just complete nonsense. The people who peddle this Windrush narrative, they do not know Caribbean labor history, nor do they know the history of Britain in its colonial guise after the Second World War. They make no connection between 1948 and that ship and what happened in Palestine. They make no connection between the foundation of the Jewish state and the demob of people back to the Caribbean. So it is all very truncated, and it's a sanitized history. But I just wanted to make the point about movement of labor across the Caribbean region itself and the Americas.
Yes, Baba, it's an essential point that you made. We're going to come back to this issue of labor and movement and a few other things that you said in a second. Just to highlight your last point, though, you mentioned that the Windrush itself only sailed once from the Caribbean to Britain. What it was doing after that was being used to transport British ships around the world in their warmongering colonial exploits. And a part of those exploits were in the so-called Middle East. Yeah. So just identifying that what Baba Gus is saying is explicitly true. The extent to which that ship that was called the Windrush was used to transport British troops to the so-called Middle East for the sake of securing British military interests is a fact. Yeah. Now, I'm going to bring Baba Cecil Gutsmore in on this next question as well. But I think one of the major consequences of this Windrush narrative has been, especially as it has played out in my generation, to be a misunderstanding of the nature of the Black presence in the UK. because the Windrush is seen as an exclusively Caribbean affair. And some will go as far as to say, well, it was the Caribbeans and the Indians. The Africans came later. Now, by African, they mean those of us from the continent. So the idea is that between 1948 and 1973, Africans from the continent were not a part of those who are migrating to the UK. And this was said very explicitly. Shout out to the sisters who run Your Aunties Could Never podcast. They had an interview with a brother called Kelso recently, and he made this point explicitly. He said that there were no Nigerians and Ghanaians here, yes, during that time, yeah. And Baba Gus, in the midst of us preparing for this show, you had sent me a piece from Mama Amabaini, entitled "The Africans and the Windrush Generation, 1948 to 1973, Some Comparisons and Silences." And in that piece, she says in 1951, in terms of the non-white population, there was an estimated 15,300 West Indians, 30,800 Indians, 5,000 Pakistanis, and 5,600 West Africans in Britain. A decade later, so that's 1961, figures stood at 171,800 in terms of Africans from the Caribbean, African-Caribbean, 81,400 Indians, 24,900 Pakistanis, and 19,800 from West Africa, specifically. Yes. And my other research, looking at statistics and so on and so forth, suggests to me that somewhere in the region of 80,000 to 100,000, give or take, people from the African continent, so not just West Africa, as in Black Africans, came from the African continent during those years. Do you have anything to say in terms of the this misrepresentation of this idea of a Caribbean migration exclusively outside the context of an African migration?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Amabaini and her work. That particular article is very instructive. I'm not quite sure how many of those Windrush people have actually read it, but it stands to reason, it seems to me, that even if you don't go all the way back to 1900 or the late 1800s, when you consider what Henry Sylvester Williams and his comrades did in 1900 to bring about the sorry, can I just to bring about the first Pan-African Congress in 1900. Most of the compatriots were people from West Africa. I mean, other parts of Africa too, including Ethiopia, right? But the notion that somehow or other it's only Caribbean people who were around is nonsense. The ports, the seaports of Britain in the northeast, around Newcastle and South Shields and so on. The seaports in the northwest, Liverpool, Manchester. Manchester had a settled population of West Africans that go back before the First World War, for example. So, and of course, never mind the first Pan-African Congress. By the time George Padmore and W.B. Du Bois and those people came to have the fifth Congress in Manchester in 1945, there were many West African societies, seamen, students, and whatever, around the place, and many of them members were delegates at the 1945 conference.
Yes.
which is why I say there's a very limited understanding of the history of the black presence in Britain before this boat came. I mean, Professor Hakim Adi has filled that gap to a large extent, and more people should read his stuff. But you know, I know by the time I came here in 1964, there were pockets of West Africans, even in Oxford, loads in London, and there were they owned businesses in Manchester, in the Wally Range area, in the Moss Side area, in Cheetham Hill, and so on. So there was a thriving black presence. Okay, not as numerical as happened in that wave that came after 1948, but a sizable presence, making a massive contribution to the economy and to public services in Britain.
Give thanks, Baba Gus. Baba Olusetu, welcome once again. Anything to add on that particular point?
Not specifically on that, although it's important to in thinking about our migration history to realize that many of the people who came from the Caribbean in the immediate Second World War period didn't come because of any illusions about mother country. Most of them would have preferred to migrate to the United States of America, and it's precisely because that opportunity was closed off. And migration within the Caribbean, for example, to Cuba and those places, were also that people came to without illusion to the United Kingdom. And the other thing that seems to me to matter is this genuinely idiotic notion that we had been invited by the mother country to help repair the place. The 48 Act, which formally restated the rights of people, subjects of the British Empire, to enter the United Kingdom, to go anywhere within the royalties domain without let or hindrance. The British didn't imagine for a moment that a wave of, and it's absolutely important to remind ourselves, what Gus just reminded us, that lots of black people, Indians and Africans, were here before the Second World War. But our coming wasn't expected by the British, and they spent the next 14 years trying to overcome the problem that race was going to be the basis on which British subjects who had that historic right to go anywhere within the empire, only race was the basis on which we were going to be excluded. And it took them some time to find the basis to do that. And it's the independence, in inverted commas, of our countries that gave them the pretext, which is embedded in the 62 legislation and the subsequent legislation. So no invitation and so on.
Yeah, thanks for that, Elder Cecil. On the point of these migration patterns and the fact of a no invitation, Mama Amabani does in her paper detail the fact that, sorry, first of all, the act in 1948 that Baba Cecil is referring to is the Nationality Act, yes?
Yeah, the 48
of 1948, and there were some changes in that in the early 1970s, which we'll get to. But in the paper that I mentioned earlier, Africans and the Windrush Generation, by Amabaini, she does make the point And she says, really is it acknowledged that influencing the decision-making of the Labour government of Clement Attlee, 1945 to 1951, was the belief that Caribbean people were considered closer to British culture compared to what is perceived as the natives, quote unquote, of Africa. 5 years before the arrival of the SS Empire, emphasis on Empire, Windrush, the Labour Party produced a report which reflected a British view that Africans were less civilized than Caribbean people. The colonies were inhabited by backward people or peoples of primitive cultures, and the great majority of which are in Africa. Emphasis mine. So this is a British party document, all right, that designated these quote unquote Caribbean people as closer to British values. And I'm highlighting that because I think we're getting into the political implications of this whole narrative now. And I would like your assessment on what I'm about to say, which is that a part of the implications and possibly the purpose of this is classical divide and rule, in the sense of the fact, one, that the Windrush generation was made a model immigrant class in comparison to the descendants of the so-called Windrush generation, who are not faring very well in British society. And so elder Africans from the Caribbean were juxtaposed against younger Africans from the Caribbean who were said to be filling up the prisons and disaffected and in crime. And that played out in the media, particularly among the right wing. And then another element of this was then to create another model immigrant class based upon the increased migrations of Africans from the continent, particularly West Africa. So now the narrative then became, based upon the disaggregation between Black African and Black Caribbean, that the Black Caribbeans were failing in comparison to Black Africans. And so therefore Black Africans became the model class because Black Africans are concerned with good school grades and have two-parent families, and so on and so forth. And this narrative created or has been used to embellish on a division between these two African groups of people to serve these different particular narratives at different points in political discussion, depending on the interests that are being served at the time. I'm looking for a comment on that assessment from you both.
I don't know if Prof. Gus wants to go with that. I mean, you're pointing to some realities, but I think it's important to understand that the British were systemically racist towards all non-white people, including non-whites from South Asia. And
yes,
one of the wickedest operations ever, in my view, against non-white people in the period of history we're talking about is that assault on Southall in 1979 in the Metropolitan Police in defense of the National Front, when in that moment when Blair Peach was killed. So even though you're correct that those generational distinctions were made and used and exploited, it's important to understand that the systemic racism of this place impacted all non-whites in very fundamental ways, and so it's important not to exaggerate the extent to which the system was ready to divide and rule deliberately.
I mean, that's absolutely right, and I mean, just to qualify it a bit more, Brother Cecil mentioned 1979, and that's the year the police bludgeoned Blair Peach to death, right? But prior to that, there was the 1977 Battle of Lewisham, where again, the police were trying to give safe passage to some neo-fascists who were based in Deptford and around southeast London, and were determined to go and disrupt people, Black folk, in Lewisham and Hither Green and Lee and those sorts of places. So we have to remember that. But let's just park that for a minute. I want to go back to what you were saying earlier about the pattern of migration of West Africans to this country. One of the fallacies, and it's a dangerous one, of that whole Windrush business is this: the government has been encouraged to see the 2014 and 2016 legislation, which framed the hostile environment under Theresa May, as something that affected only Caribbean people. To a large extent, that was because of the kind of reporting that Amelia Gentleman did, although she was not the first one to actually raise those issues. She had the support and the resources of the Guardian, and she could splash it in the Guardian and get awards and all that kind of stuff. But prior to that, we know that there had been community groups all around London, protesting, resisting Theresa May's pogrom, because it started when she had these vans running around the place with billboards attached to them saying, if you are illegal, go home or face arrest. And that was 2013. And it disrupted the lives of settled people here for a very long time, because it gave oxygen to those who wanted to keep Britain white, particularly these neo-fascists, to go attacking people indiscriminately. So whether you were here with leave to remain, indefinite leave to remain, and you'd been here since 1931 or 1951, it didn't really matter. The fact is that you were there. You weren't wearing a label saying I am legal or I am illegal. It meant that the police, the immigration people, everybody could just round you up until you proved that you were not entitled to be rounded up. It's like stop and search. That same blunderbuss kind of attitude towards people and their rights. Everybody becomes a suspect. So the fact that the people saw the Windrush generation and the Windrush scandal, particularly the scandal, as affecting only Caribbean people, not even West Africans, was a complete nonsense. And what it did was it enabled the Home Office to trample upon the rights of those other groups, because the only people making a noise were people from the Caribbean. Nobody has done, as far as I'm aware, any reliable research to demonstrate how many people from West Africa were affected by the hostile environment scandal, how many people from South Asia. And to go back to what Brother Cecil was saying, there's a nuance to all of that too, because yes, the annual statistics in terms of school achievement foregrounded Chinese people as doing extremely well, Indians as doing extremely well, and then the rest begin to slide towards the bottom. The fact of the matter is that there are massive distinctions in terms of class, caste, and achievement amongst that South Asian group. Bangladeshis do worse than Pakistanis. Pakistanis do worse than Indians. And the schools worked with that, and they patterned their teaching according to it. So it is not so surprising that year after year after year, Indian children do much better than Bangladeshi children. And it's not only because many of them come from more professional groups
Right.
than Bangladeshis, right? It's also the fact that schools pattern their learning and their learning and teaching regimes based upon their perceptions of the people, the groups that they're actually teaching. So the I mean, all of that, in my view, underscores the backwardness of that whole Windrush narrative. It doesn't take account of issues of class. It doesn't take account of issues of caste. It doesn't take account of issues of ethnic nationality and the characteristics that people apply to that.
Right. Absolutely. And you know, I was gonna come to this issue of Indians and in particular. Because all of the statistics that I've read, and you can correct me if I'm mistaken here, would suggest that there were more Indians arriving in the UK during this Windrush period, the so-called Windrush period, than Africans from the Caribbean or from the continent. Yet, there is no great national narrative centered on the Indian migration and the Indian contribution, right, to British in the same way. This has been developed around African-Caribbean people and made a national spectacle. I would like your assessment or your insight as to why that might be. Why has this narrative not centered, or why is there not an equivalent narrative centering Indians in the way that there is this narrative centering Africans from the Caribbean?
Brother Sister, do you want to?
It is certainly correct that there is a different narrative between the two groups, but I think it's important to remember that Salvations struggled manfully and effectively in relation to immigration issues, and were in the field in perhaps a much better organized way than we were. And the assaults on them, including the virginity test, which is the most notorious aspect of it, they certainly experienced also, and it goes back to my point about the systemic racism, anti-non-white racism of this place. So while it is true that there are different public narratives, it's important to acknowledge that as a terrain of struggle, Salvations were very much in the field in exactly the way that we were over migration and immigration issues. And
be assured that point is well made and not being disputed at all. Yeah. And feel free to go into further detail. But I think there must be there are political implications and or reasons for which this narrative has not been centered around that in the same way, because all this contribute, and we're going to come to contributionism in a second, as you're saying that we have made to Britain can be said to have been made by the Asian community in general and the Indian community in particular.
Absolutely.
But the British society has not invested in a national narrative that centers that profiles that. I don't know a name of any ship that carried Indians to the UK. I have no idea what ships they came on, right? You know what I'm saying? I don't know what year, right, the mass migration began, because there's not a national narrative, yes, that centers this. And so when we look at the fact that, as Baba Gus is saying, the hostile environment didn't just affect African people, African-Caribbean people. This is in part because of the fact that the narrative doesn't center those people. It's not designed to create a contribution energy around the Indian as it is the same for the African Caribbean. So I'm wondering what might be the reason for this. Yeah, I think that's a question worth asking. And there may not be a definitive answer, but I think it's a question worth exploring.
Brother Gus may have a better take on that than I.
I think there are two things here really. One is that although the Caribbean states, let's be precise, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad, got their independence fairly early, 60s, early 1960s. To a large extent, the people from India, I'm not now talking so much about Pakistan and Bangladesh, people from India were much more independent of Britain in terms of culture and education and all of that stuff than we were in the Caribbean.
Right.
The British were more vicious in their erasure of everything African in the Caribbean than they could ever have been in India itself. Never mind after partition, India and Bangladesh and so on. So in that sense, I mean, when I talk about the British leaving a reserve pool of labor in the Caribbean, that's what they did. I mean, you've only got to look at the work that Arthur Lewis did in that 1930s period, when he looked at the conditions under which people were working and living, and what caused all of that labor unrest across the region. I mean, and he was writing only about 6 years before the Second World War started. And it goes back to the point that I was making before. The critical thing is this: enslavement plays a major part in all of that. Yes, there was indentureship from India to the Caribbean and Guyana and South America and so on, but it is the continuation of the apprenticeship system after the formal abolition of enslavement, and how that segued into the conditions that the British continue to operate even after 1900. So it's the way in which Britain related to its crown colonies. It had a different relationship, in my view, to the crown colonies in the Caribbean than it did to India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. I mean, the story of the British Raj is a different narrative, a different story to the story of the British in Jamaica and Trinidad and so on. And just to come back to one of the points that I think Brother Cecil was making about this business, and I know you're going to talk about invitation in a minute. We have to remember that the conditions in which people were living were pretty dire, which is why when Sam King and the rest of them went back after the Second World War, I mean, the man said in his book he did not want his children to grow up in those conditions in Jamaica. So he came back. He came back to Britain. They were pretty dire, and the Moyne Commission that was asked by the British Parliament to investigate conditions in which people were living in the Caribbean wrote a deadly report, and all the stuff that Arthur Lewis did in his Fabian pamphlet, which became Labor in the West Indies, points exactly to the not only the conditions, but the power relationships between the British Crown agents, if you like, the plantation owners and their descendants, and the African people who were descendants of chattel labor.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to come back to this.
May I say, and so deadly was the description of the conditions of existence of Caribbean people in those British Caribbean colonies, that the Moyne Commission report was suppressed by the British.
That's right. That's
It
right.
was
Yes, of course.
in
Yes.
38 and wasn't published until 45. And the reason
right.
for that is revealed about the conditions of existence of our people.
Mm, mm.
I was going to come
You
back
see,
to you.
the things that all of that is completely lost in that Windrush.
In the Windrush narrative. No, it's I want to emphasize the point, yeah, that our bubbers are making. Yeah. My grandfather, who passed away well, coming up to 2 years ago now. It's about a year and a half ago. Was born in Cuba. Yes, my family on my father's side is from Jamaica. But my grandfather was born in Cuba because his father traveled to Cuba for work. Yeah. And and there are so many of those stories in our history. And I would agree with you. I don't think, my impression is that a lot of our generation, and certainly not the generations below us, all this second and third generation Windrush talk, are very underinformed about the conditions in the Caribbean at the time when our grandparents and great-grandparents, in some instances, were traveling to the UK. Yes, those stories are lost, and the Windrush narrative, the havoc that it's playing in my generation, and we're going to come back to this in a second, is for us to anchor our identity in a sense of British Caribbeanness that is based upon a forced narrative and an uninformed narrative about our sojourn, even in the Caribbean. We don't even begin to talk about Africa yet and our relationship to Africa, but our sojourn even in the Caribbean. So, because you weren't here at that point in the conversation, Elder Cecil, let me give you an opportunity to expand upon any of that you might wish in terms of labor, migration, and the conditions in the Caribbean, and our relationship to migration to the UK, British Empire, etc., etc. Let me give you an opportunity to do that now.
What I would say quickly, and I think it's worth actually getting that stuff out of the way, because it seems to me that the biggest issue that we have to confront is the one that Professor Gus's book raised about the attempt to anchor Caribbean people and Jewish people in the UK on an entirely false and dangerous, even deeply basis. So I do think that we need to spend a great deal of time exploring the meaning, the political error, and the political danger of what is being done around that angle, which Professor Gus brilliantly in his paper.
I take your point. Go on.
Having said that, I think we mustn't fail to acknowledge the reality of a Caribbean culture that was expressed and developed here in the post-Second World War period, when, because for the first time we were together in one place, on the back of an educational and a labor migration, with some of our most brilliant people just momentarily concentrated in this place. And what we did, that generation of some of our best intellectual people, what we did in terms of creating a Caribbean literature, recognized as a world literature in that moment, what we did musically, what we did in terms of bringing, for example, Jamaica and Trinidad together in the Notting Hill Carnival, and that stuff mustn't be pushed aside or not analyzed and appreciated just because of the follies of the Windrush narrative, because our people were extraordinarily creative in the difficult circumstances in which we found ourselves, and also the extent to which those difficult circumstances forced us together. Yeah.
At some point, I'm gonna cut. Oh, sorry, Baba Gus. I did mute you because of the background noise. So if you're trying to make a point now,
Thanks for doing that. It's
yeah, go ahead.
I had to relocate because my broadband is anyway. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. We can hear you clearly. Yeah. So I want to come back to that as in a second, Elder Cecil, and particularly the relationship between Africans from the continent and Africans from the Caribbean during that period. There's a lot of distortion around that narrative as well in terms of our relationship to each other. But we'll come back to that in a second. I do want to get to what you just said, though, in terms of what is happening now with this Salvage the Windrush Anchor Foundation. And our viewers will be aware of the fact that I produced a video released a couple of days ago, because I actually was not aware of this until reading your paper, Baba Gus, on the dystopian future of the Windrush. By the way, brothers and sisters, yeah. So right, okay.
Bring that stuff.
Right. No, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna leave the link to the paper in the video description and the comment section. And if you are not subscribed to Baba Gus's mailing list, I encourage ones and ones to be subscribed to his mailing list. As he said in his opening introduction, he is well known for kicking the ass of the establishment, and one of the ways that he does that is through his regular mail outs, yeah, through his mailing list, yeah. Some of the best analysis that you find in terms of what is happening on the political scene as far as our community in the UK, you'll find from Baba Gus's mailing list. But he goes into this analysis of the fact that there is in fact a project to salvage the anchor of the good ship Windrush, Empire Windrush, and it is being characterized by Patrick Vernon, OBE,
Sir Patrick Vernon, Sir Patrick Vernon.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you for the correction, Baba Gus. Sir Patrick Vernon, OBE, and one Mary van der Zil, OBE, as those who are involved. In fact, she is the vice chair of the Windrush Anchor Memorial Foundation, as a symbolic gesture that combines the shared histories of the Jewish community and the Black community in the UK. And bear in mind that while some are out there, I have to make this point, so forgive me, my elders, are on Africans versus Caribbeans beef, yeah, what we're about to discuss is the kind of chicanery that the British establishment is engaged in whilst you are distracted with this foolishness. And so the idea, I'm going to read from your article now, Baba Gus. There was a piece about this published in the Jewish Chronicle entitled Windrush Anchor to be salvaged for Black British Memorial, also honoring ship's Jewish history. And in this woeful piece of propaganda, it is said the anchor represents far more than a maritime artifact, he said, and this is Patrick Vernon speaking. It symbolizes courage, hope, resilience, and the contribution of the Windrush generation to modern Britain. Through this memorial and education program, we want future generations to better understand the legacy and of Windrush and the communities that help shape contemporary Britain. The article goes on to say, oh gosh, I thought I highlighted this. 1 second. In the mouth of Van der Zil, forgive me, let me just find my space, that this ship, which was under Nazi control prior to being the Windrush, represented one of the most horrific chapters in European history. And then, when it becomes the Empire Windrush under British colonialism, is said to represent opportunity and hope and all of these great and wonderful things. So my question therefore becomes, how does a Nazi ship go from representing a dark chapter when controlled by the Nazis, but a great chapter of hope and wonder and opportunity when controlled by British colonialists? Please, Baba Gus. help us with this conundrum.
Well, I mean, if anything points up the absurdity of this whole Windrush project, I think this does. For any number of reasons. I mean, I was flabbergasted when I read the Jewish Chronicle. I mean, I don't buy it often, but I buy it to see what I buy it and read it to see what they're up to, right? It's well, obviously it's an organ of Zionism. But what bemuses me is how Patrick Vernon got into bed with Marie van der Zyl.
In the first place.
That's what I can't understand. What would have possessed that fellow to think that there can be some kind of a partnership between the Windrush project and the Zionist Board of Deputies and that whole lot, including Keir Starmer, who was the flag carrier for Zionism in this country. It just seemed I mean, okay. It doesn't make any sense. There's nothing logical about it, even on its own, at its own face value, so to speak. Because as you say, and as I said in my little piece, that ship carried 46 Norwegian Jews to whatever port it was, and then put them on a train that was taking them to Auschwitz. All but one of them perished in Auschwitz. So why the Jewish community would want to valorize that ship and iconize it, I don't quite know. There are other reasons, and I'm still trying to work out what they might be. I think they've got to do with a view that African people in Britain, like Muslims in Britain and progressive whites, support Palestine, and if the Zionist community could be seen to be working in partnership with something as big and brave as Windrush, then that's the kind of political coup for them. Yeah, it's like that hopeless fellow in Jamaica. What's his name? Holding, the prime minister. Holness. Going
a very
to,
unholy
going
individual.
Going to Israel to see Netanyahu, and then asking Netanyahu to send medical people and personnel and equipment to Jamaica to help with the Melissa relief. I mean, you can't make it up. You know what I mean? So I believe that's the politics of it all. But then they want people to contribute £2.5 million so that they could send divers down there to recover that anchor, bring it up and spruce it up, and present it as representing the unified contribution of the Jewish community and the Caribbean community to rebuilding Britain. I mean, you not even in your worst nightmares you could dream up that foolishness.
But
sorry, Elder Seth, I'm gonna come to you right now. What's I gonna say? Just give me a sec, because I did find what I was trying to read to contextualize the question I'm asking. The article says foundation leaders say that confronting the ship's full history, from its association to one of Europe's darkest chapters to its latter role as a symbol of hope, opportunity, and renewal. So this is now the ship transporting African-Caribbean people from the Caribbean to Britain, representing a symbol of hope, opportunity, and renewal, offers a powerful opportunity to strengthen understanding between communities and preserve important lessons for future generations. Mary van der Zil, who is the former chair of the Jewish Board of Deputies and the vice chair now of the Windrush Anchor Memorial Foundation, says that by telling the full history of this ship, from its connection to the Holocaust to the hope and opportunity and contribution symbolized by Windrush, we create a powerful space for dialogue, education, and solidarity. Yeah. And as Baba Gus is saying, they're looking to raise 2.5 million to engage in a salvage mission for the anchor of the Windrush, to parade it around the country as symbolic of the Windrush generation and all kind of different things. Elder Cecil, go ahead.
I think it's important that we register the core understanding of Zionism in our community. And
Sure,
I think,
exactly.
I think that Patrick falling for this one is a function of that non-understanding. Because especially the Protestant ones of us from the Caribbean who were brought up on the King James Version, it's very easy to identify with modern Jewry and that whole misrepresentation of our history, which is in the Old Testament, where our ancestors in ancient Egypt and Kemet get misrepresented to the advantage of these folk. Rastafari, one of our most progressive cultural, political, progressive point, has a tendency to be favorable towards Israel. So it is extremely important that we understand that we don't have a unified history, which Ms. van der Zell is alleging there. We actually have a seriously contradictory history. And what they're attempting to do is to develop a new modality of exploiting the Holocaust, and in the process linking our history with theirs. Professor Gus mentioned 1948, and it's important that we know that in the year when our desperate ancestors, now all ancestors, yes, came on that ship, what the Jewish community was doing was a genocide against Palestinians. Many of them were black.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that genocide has continued and been intensified, and you have reputable Jewish historians. One of them wrote in the pages of New Left Review in 2004. And what he says is that the only error in that moment of genocide, ethnic cleansing, and so on, and mass rape, and all of that, which is in his own work. People thought he was anti-Zionist for a moment. The only error that they made was not completely to cleanse Palestinians in 1948. So we Africans who are conscious of the need to be real in relation to our history and to be real in relation to other people's history must be saying, as a matter of principle and contestation, that there is no common ground whatsoever
Absolutely.
and the Jewish people in the post-war period, because during that period they have been central to the anti-Semitism of the West directed against the Arabs, who are in fact much larger. If the word Semite means anything, the Arabs are a much more important Semitic people than the Jews. And we need to remember, when I say that we don't have a common history, this may be daring. There's a concept that talks about Judeo-Christendom. And because of the wickedness of the Christian part of that Judeo-Christendom to the Jewish part, we've tended to omit analysis of the actual practice of the Judeo part of it. And when we do that, what we see is their involvement in enslavement. Jews from Holland, from Netherlands, were central to spreading enslavement as a system from Brazil through the northern South America out into the Caribbean. They don't want us to say that, but you can read their own books. I have them on my shelf, where they're talking about the Sephardim, as that process as part of the Sephardim inheritance. And it's extremely well documented. When our scholars attempt to touch on it, they come at us, including what they did to Tony Martin, who documented it with his usual brilliance. So not only were the Jewish people seriously involved in Atlantic enslavement, they were part of the settler colonial project, the European settler colonial project of the late 19th and early 20th century, and Palestine, which incidentally was won importantly by a West Indian regiment when Britain took the Palestine from Turkey. Our ancestors were there, and they were the main soldiers in the expedition. And what then happened is that, and Zionism, modern political Zionism, was already developing, and they exploited, using British colonial power, that whole process of capturing the land from the ancient, from inhabitants who were there before them, when their God allegedly told them to go and take somebody else's land, the land of the people that it's reported in the Bible, the land that they took was fundamentally the land of the same people that we now call Palestinians. And so not only are they complicit in that way, but during the Cold War, Israel was central to providing security on behalf of the West for the people in continental Africa, who the West calls our bastards. That is to say, the Cold War period of African dictatorship in favor of capitalism and the West. Israel was central to that. Israel provided intelligence to the French against the Algerian Revolution. Israel, party, and I'm talking about Jewish state, was a party to the South African apartheid regime.
That's right.
Enormously, and the Jewish community,
and Namibia as well.
All of that,
yes.
And that Jewish community, which is trying, and only people who don't understand that history, like Patrick or Somalis, can actually fall for that false and wicked narrative, because we are
sorry, Elder Sesto. I don't want people to get confused. You didn't say Somalis. You said some Malis. Yes, I want that clear.
Some members of the Mali family.
Right. I'll go come to that.
Mali family are big supporters of the racist Jewish state of Israel. And Brother Gus documents very well in those quotes from Ms. van der Zil, us Jamaicans call it feisty, the feisty attempt that they are presently engaged in of trying to make criticism of Jewish racism and genocide evidence of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Yeah. And they because of their control of power and influence, they've got a definition that they're trying to force down people's throats, and we mustn't accept it. And they've got Brother Gus documents the extent to which they got the people in competition for succession of some labor leader.
Corbyn, yeah.
Yes. And we might not have time to deal with this tonight, but the Zionist project of getting rid of Jeremy Corbyn, I'm not a fan of his, incidentally. I think he's a very bad politician who understood if he'd understood what Zionism was, they'd never have got him in the way that got him. And there is so much more that I didn't. So I'm not a fan, but it matters. And I have a book right here in which somebody called Dave Rich, and it came out in 2016, before Corbyn was elected leader of the Labour Party, and they are already talking about his anti-Zionism, which is very all Corbyn's anti-Zionism was support for the Palestinian. He's not actually anti-Zionism. And the
State of Israel,
he's not actually anti-Zionist. He doesn't understand Zionism and never has. That's why they got him. So,
essential points, Elder Cecil, and I want to qualify something, because we have a quite significant Rastafari audience, and I want to say that there are certain strains among Rastafari that are susceptible to Zionist propaganda. Peter Tosh is clear on it.
Don't for a moment think that it's all of Rastafari. Otherwise, I know that. I know that. Just as a proprietor of the platform, that's why I make that point very clear. Yeah, Peter Tosh understood the thing proper. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I mean. I want to say that Peter Tosh, basically, was very. There's a song, I'm forgetting the name of the song, but where he refers to Palestine directly. In terms of the wars. I'm sure he did.
Yes, I remember shortly, but yeah, Peter Tosh and those who are of like mind were clear on the thing. But Elder Cecil is absolutely correct that there are certain prominent people who profile as Rastafari today that are openly doing fundraisers, musical fundraisers for the IDF. At this moment in time. It's a serious travesty. Enough people now gonna talk about it because, well, let's not go into that today. But that is a fact, yes. And so there's a lot going on there. Elder Gus, sorry, anything you want to add to that?
Well, what I want to add is this: that if you received my maybe last couple or so of my mailouts, you would see that I dealt with that business of the dangers in Andrew Holness and the Jamaican government inviting Israel and Netanyahu in particular to effectively control cybersecurity in the entire region. It's happening not just in Jamaica. It's that crazy woman in Trinidad, Kamla business. And I mean, people. Okay, Brother Cecil is absolutely right. There's not a sufficiently clear and deep understanding of Zionism and its horrors and dangers amongst people dealing with this Windrush stuff here. I would say that's also true of many governments in the Caribbean. And the ease with which people are allowing Israel and Israeli-controlled companies to win massive contracts, to deal with their security, to deal with issues of information and so on, simply bewilders me. I'm having an argument right now with my own government in Grenada because they've got a Jewish company building a new hospital there, state-of-the-art, everything, etc. They operate in New York. They're a big global conglomerate, and they saw fit to get them to come and donate and build this hospital. I mean, what is happening is in the same way as they did just after enslavement. There's that Zionist lobby of very, very well-heeled rich people,
Yes.
inserting themselves across the region for geopolitical reasons, and our lot, they just can't see it. They believe that it is a form of aid, you know, and they are completely ignoring what is actually going on in Gaza, in the West Bank, the sheer barbarism that all of that represents. I mean, I just find it utterly bewildering that those governments and CARICOM has not adopted a unified position on this nonsense.
Sorry, Elder Cecil. Please don't forget your point. I just want to make it clear that what our elders are saying to us in the context of this conversation is that this salvaging the anchor of the Windrush propaganda is being used to create a social relationship between us, the British state, and the Zionist project that makes us susceptible to exploitation and domination, not just in the UK, but back home in the Caribbean. If we see ourselves as having this shared, unified history, and Van der Zyl makes the point about understanding what discrimination looks like, then we don't want to be seen as discriminating against people, against them in particular, even as they support policies that would facilitate our discrimination and our exploitation. That is what is being said here. I want to make that point very, very clear. Go ahead, Elder Cecil.
Yes, I'm not sure if I remember the point I was going to make, but this business about... No, it's okay. This business about the misunderstanding or non-understanding of Zionism, it's very in our communities and the Caribbean communities, the places from which we come, right? And it matters that some of our best intellectuals, Rex Nettleford, was very pro-Israel. And it's brilliant.
Sorry, Elder Cecil. Rex Nettleford is a noted Jamaican cultural scientist. That's what I make that.
Yes, and Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies for a while was actually his last job, and a brilliant intellectual. But he was Zionist, and it matters that I lived back in Jamaica for about 11 years, from 97 to 2009. It was during the period of the Iraq War. And I had an understanding of that, which related to the fact that the West, having used Saddam Hussein in that war against Iran, he became powerful with an important protected air force, which Israel couldn't take out by preemptive action. And that's what that first war was about. It was about using the US, the UN and the US to destroy a potential enemy of Israel, which the West built up with Israeli support in a war that he fought on their behalf. And all of the Arabs, with the exception of Syria, came in behind the Iraqi man for no good reason, accepting that the enemy was an ancient one. So there's a whole lot of stuff. But back in Jamaica at that time, I expressed elements of my anti-Zionism, the politics that we were doing, including the politics against that war. And it matters, for its worth, that the people who were running Transparency International in Jamaica was an old Zionist couple. And the woman, after I made the speech, came up to me and said, and I'm not kidding you, and I don't have to invent, she actually said, you shouldn't go down that road. The Jews in Jamaica are very happy. We don't have any issues. And he wanted to silence me on that issue. And round about that same time, a Zionist scholar of a sort, certainly academic from the States, passed through Jamaica, passed through UWI, and tried to do at UWI what they were doing in the United States of America, namely shutting down anti-Zionist and anti-Israeli politics. It didn't work, and she went off to New Zealand, I think, where she went. Actually have the correspondence that moment and her intervention there generated. It was just slightly after the Tony Martin matter in his book came out. So we have to understand these matters, and it's very easy because of many of us brought up as fundamentalist Christians, and when you are brought up as a fundamentalist Christian, you've got to get out of your head and consciousness identification with ancient Judaism.
Yes, exactly.
And one of the things, because I look out for this in the work of intellectuals, but Paul Gilroy, because, and he says it's in his autobiographical work, that he grew up amongst Jews in a North London community and identified with them. And he's ended up with a body of work which contains not a single criticism of Zionist wrongdoing and a systemic over-identification with Jewish people. And there's nothing wrong with them as such. Importantly, we have to understand their role in history. And we have to understand that in relation to us, the Judeo part of Judeo-Christendom was as wicked towards us as the Christian bit of Judeo-Christendom. It doesn't matter where you're looking. If you look, for example, and I'm going to shut up right now. If you look at it really doesn't matter. But if you look at what happened to Haiti in 1824, when the money was raised to pay off France out of Haitian pockets with that loan, and the loan was organized by who? The leading Jewish banker Rothschild in the UK. And anytime you look, you see them. Their control of our diamonds. How they capture that? Because we've got to understand all of that. The Zionists are not our friends, and the Jewish community as an economic entity are not our allies and not our friends. Although that in their campaign against anti-Semitism, one of the things that they did was that they used Marxism and they also used anti-racism. So if you look at the supporters of W.B. Du Bois and that encyclopedia and so on, Jewish money is behind it. So they look progressive, but it's cover. It's cover for a project that is not in our interest and not in the interest of the Arab people, and not in the interest.
You could apply that analysis, my brother, to the whole Anchor project and the Windrush Anchor Foundation. That's what I say. It's precisely that.
It's another dimension. It's another dimension of the exploitation of the Holocaust. The connection is that 40-odd Jews who were victims of Christendom, because the German Nazis were part of Christendom. That's why, so including Churchill, had so little difficulty with Hitler, other than in terms of competition between the German.
The point that's being made, brothers and sisters, is that Zionism is just as much a part of the Western imperialist project as the Monroe Doctrine and the civilizing mission. The Monroe of the United States of America and the civilizing mission of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And I want to bring what you said back to the UK for a second by going back to Baba Gus's paper in relation to some of his experiences. And he's and this is now to highlight the extent to which our narrative, the narrative of our history as a people in this country, is being co-opted in the service of the British state. Who decides what can be discussed and what cannot be discussed, yes, in service of their interest. Baba Gus says, following the Labour election of victory of 1997, thereby coming out of Thatcher's wilderness after 19 years, I was asked by Tony Blair to help establish a race relations forum to advise Jack Straw, the Home Secretary then Home Secretary, on matters of race and social exclusion. There came a point when the forum was asked to consider a proposal for a Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I won't read everything, but Baba Gus goes on to say that a group within that formation challenged them in relation to remembrance of the Holocaust, which was not committed by the British, but a seeming lack of willingness to remember and evoke and erect memorials for what is often referred to as the African Holocaust in terms of British enslavement and colonization of African people on the continent and in the Caribbean. And he goes on to explain that a letter was written to that effect. And then he says, there was clearly no appetite in government for acknowledging the African Holocaust and Britain's complicity in a genocide and the protracted brutalization of Africans at home and in the diaspora. And so this is being raised again in the context of the fact that now we're being asked to remember events pertaining to the Holocaust and events pertaining to the Windrush as a shared combined history. In the context of the Holocaust representing horror and the Windrush representing hope. Yes? and opportunity. This is what's taking place at the moment. That Mary Van der Zyl, as the former chair of the board of deputies and now the vice chair of the Salvaging the Windrush Anchor Foundation, is describing, is redefining British colonial exploits as symbolic of hope, yes, an opportunity for us as Black people in this country. I don't know if you want to expand upon that at all, Baba Gus, as we approach our close, brother.
But yes, I mean you're absolutely right. It's not just absurd, but it is dangerous. And one of the things that I want us to come on to is, given all of that we've said and that we acknowledge, what kind of interventions are we going to make in relation to this business?
You preempt me, Baba Gus. Go ahead.
We would come on to that. What I think is this. As I said in my piece, it isn't only that there is no connection and no correlation between those experiences, our experience over 400 years and the Jewish Holocaust. What people are forgetting is that the Zionists across the globe, especially in Britain and the United States, have been weaponizing the Holocaust for too long. I mean, that's a statement of historical fact. They've been weaponizing the Holocaust for too long, giving succor and absolution to the likes of Netanyahu and his Minister of Defense and some pretty barbaric people.
Yes.
I mean, they have no moral compass. They have no concern whatsoever about human life. They talk about their right to exist, but they extend that right to the right to exterminate Palestinians. And we don't seem to have a position on that. And certainly these Windrush people don't seem to have a position on that. So Marie van der Zyl has absolutely no justification, no authority to talk about anything at all to do with the African-Caribbean community.
Yeah.
For all kinds of obvious reasons. You know,
she's been enabled by Patrick. She's been enabled by Patrick to do that.
That is right. That is right. And
we have to tear that down. And incidentally, it matters that the Board of Deputies of British Jews and the Chief Rabbi and their paper, the Jewish Chronicle, just like Netanyahu and those Israeli ministers that you talk about, see nothing wrong with genocide.
That's right, exactly.
Not only do they not see anything wrong with genocide, they're trying very deliberately and organized, intellectually well thought out way to make criticism, recognition, and then criticism of genocide anti-Semitism, because those who are doing it are the Jewish state. It's intellectually and morally absurd. And in your paper, Brother Goss, which everybody should read, it's excellent. Congratulations on it again. But the Board of Deputy British Jews and that collective of Jewish entities are
including
so
Labour Friends of Israel, by the way. Including Labour Friends of Israel.
Including Labour Friends of Israel, as part of the capture of the political system. The Labour Party is part of it. That's why all of those aspirant leaders and deputy leaders signed up to that wicked and idiotic definition of anti-Semitism, which, to repeat, what it says and does is to make recognition of genocide and condemnation of genocide anti-Semitism, because the people who are conducting the genocide are the Jewish state, who are entitled to commit genocide and to do anything that they wish, because they went through the Holocaust. And incidentally, they're the people who voted. I'm not a fan of the UN March resolution, but they voted against it. And we need to know that in voting against it, they said it set up a hierarchy of human suffering, which they are against. They're not at all. The Jewish Zionist approach is that their suffering is the worst ever in human history. And anybody who says anything otherwise, they reject, and the rejection of that motion by Israel and the US and that crazy South American
Argentina.
Argentina, yes. Is evidence of a moral bankruptcy that's staggering.
Yes,
and that moral bankruptcy inhabits the British community of Judaism. And when they call the paltry and sometimes impressive efforts of ordinary people here to oppose the genocide that's happening, that their people are carrying out in Israel, in Gaza, and so on. When they call that hate marches, and when they say that it makes them uncomfortable, what they're trying to do, and to some extent they're succeeding.
Yes, with the complicity of the state.
Yes, when a notion, when a motion by the Scottish Party came before the British Parliament to discuss these matters, Starmer and the current Speaker of the House of Commons, conspired to prevent the discussion of that motion.
Yeah,
that's how terrible things are, and it matters that we recognize what is happening, and that even though they come for you when you criticize them, so we're actually endangering ourselves because they're ruthless and wicked. These are the people who tried to stop Angela Davis getting an honorary degree from a university in the south of the United States, an important university, on the grounds that she was anti-Semitic. Angela stood up and she got the award, but that's how ruthless and wicked they are.
Exactly.
Absolutely. My elders, I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate your time. I value your time. And I do want to follow what Baba Gus has just said in terms of what interventions that we need to be making in relation to this. Whilst you were in Jamaica, Elder Cecil, British society, between 1997 and 2009, British society in 2007 were engaged in a mass propaganda surrounding the 200th anniversary of the so-called abolition of the so-called Slave Trade Act. And we were mobilized in this country. I was, must have been 22 years old at the time. And a part of Operation Truth, 2007. Yeah. And we organized a significant counter propaganda attack against the narrative. And I'm thinking that a similar thing needs to happen. One of the reasons why we had to go through what we went through at the beginning of the conversation, in terms of just retelling the story of yourselves as elders and our ancestors, you as parents and so on and so forth, is because a lot of people in my generation are woefully underinformed. Yes. About just those simple facts. And I think there's a significant work to be done in terms of raising the awareness. I want to encourage brothers and sisters, if you're watching, if you own and produce podcasts, and I apologize, my elders, for giving you more work to do. But for as long as you are with us on the physical plane, we must appreciate your value and make good use of you as elders, right? But there are many people who own and front podcasts. Many of them have bigger platforms and bigger audiences than mine. I want to encourage you. And some of us are engaging in these conversations about Windrush, about identity, about Africans versus Caribbeans, statements that so-and-so made and so-and-so made online and what this represents and all kind of different things. So I want to encourage us to speak to our elders, yes, about these questions and about the Windrush generation. If you want to speak to Baba Gus John and Baba Cecil Gutsmore, you don't have their contacts, I want to say I'm willing to help facilitate, yes, those conversations, just to expose your children's and grandchildren's and possibly great-grandchildren's generations to some of what it is that you have to share. I think that's one intervention in terms of this popular social media era that needs to be made. I would love to see Baba Gus John and Elder Cecil Gutsmore on some of the most popular podcasts that are being fronted by young Black people in this country at the moment that get hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of views. Yeah, that's one thing I want to say, and I'm encouraging you all to do that if you are watching, and if you know somebody of such a caliber, please share this video with them and let them know. I'm encouraging them to bring on Elder Cecil, Elder Gus, Mama Amabaini, Queen Mother in Zinga Sata. Yeah, and I'm going to do my best to bring them all on throughout this period. But as we close, my elders, what interventions do you all believe that we need to be making in terms of combating this propaganda and organizing our community around properly understanding these issues in relation to the Windrush anchor, in relation to the Windrush generation and that narrative and so on and so forth? Please let us know what you think we should be doing.
Well, first of all, let me say...
May I ask Brother Gus if he's had any reaction from Patrick on this matter? Because he's clearly central to it, and his part in this is deplorable and has to be contested. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Just to say before you answer, Baba Gus, we've mentioned him a few times. Patrick Vernon, OBE, Sir Patrick Vernon, is one of the most notable campaigners on issues to do with the Windrush generation, and he has been campaigning against the so-called hostile environment and advocating on behalf of those who have been negatively impacted by that hostile environment and organizing the community around those issues. Yeah. So none of these criticisms are designed to negate the brothers' positive contributions in that and many areas. It just so happens that a lot of that work fuels this propaganda, and he has now gotten himself involved in this salvage of the Windrush project that is connected to the Jewish Board of Deputies directly and indirectly. Yes, right. Sorry, say that again, Robert.
Sorry, I didn't hear what Brother Cecil said.
Yeah, say that again.
No, I said you, Brother Gus, have identified the creation of a Windrush Jewish Foundation, something that has to be taken down. It's against our interests. It's morally bankrupt. It's encouraging and providing Zionism with another boat, another skiff on which to
without a doubt. Yeah.
So, Baba Gus, the question: have you had any response from Patrick Vernon?
I have not had any response from Patrick Vernon. I didn't send the item to him directly. I know he's had it because I mean, you know, I try and put it on social media and the rest of it. Let me tell you what I think. Well, two things. First of all, I try to do a kind of idiot's guide to Windrush in 2023. And I called the book Don't Salvage the Empire Windrush, And much of what we both, Brother Cecil and I, were talking about in the course of the last 90 minutes or so, I try to present in as simple and accessible a form as possible in that book. It doesn't have a whole heap of footnotes and references and all that kind of stuff. One colleague recently says it's polemical, it's not academic. And I said, thank you for that. That's the qualification I want, right? So it's very readable. The problem with it is that although it's been reprinted twice, it is now out of print. So I've got to get it reprinted again, because I believe it is, as far as I can see, still the most accessible kind of critique of the whole Windrush stuff that people could lay their hands on. So that's a work in progress, getting that reprinted. You mentioned earlier about my monthly offerings, so to speak. If anybody wants to get on that mailing list and receive that stuff, it is, and you can put it up on the chat, my brother. The address for it is ask, as in ASK, askprofjohn@gmail.com. And then we can add people to the mailing list, and any of the prior stuff that people would like to have, we gladly send it out to them. I want to return now to what Brother Cecil was suggesting. We need to find a way of neutralizing that wretched, what's it called? Windrush Anchor Foundation, or whatever it's called. Or Windrush Anchor Memorial Project. Windrush Anchor Memorial Project, I think it is. We have to find a way of neutralizing that.
Anchor Memorial. Sorry, Baba Gus. Just to clarify, it's the Windrush Anchor Memorial Project, which is being run by the Windrush Anchor Memorial Foundation. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. Well, no, we have to go full frontal attack on that. Yeah.
Yes.
What has tended to happen in the past is that I feel very much like a lone voice. You know, I put these things out there, I put a lot of time into crafting them and so on. But we need to have our little kind of study circles and action groups or whatever that can draw upon that stuff and use it as a means of mobilizing more widely. We need a wider mobilization on this matter, especially as, you know, with good reason. Both Brother Cecil and I are totally, what's the word? Frustrated, irritated, angered by that attempt on Patrick Vernon's part to hook us into that whole Zionist project. And many people are unsuspecting about it, which is why we need to make sure that those voices are amplified in whatever ways we can. And I'm pleased to hear you say that there are those younger people, much younger than me, who have got access to and use social media, etc. I would be more than happy to make the time to appear on anybody's platform.
Absolutely.
I think what we've done this evening has been really necessary, really positive, and we should repeat it in any number of forums, really.
100%. I'm agreeing with that, Baba Gus, John, and I think Baba Gus, I'll share this with you because I think one of the other strings to this narrative is how we remember African-Caribbean service persons who fought in to use your terminology, imperialist wars. And I'm highlighting that because I had the honor of following you. Whereas in 2023, you delivered the libation, facilitated the libation at the War Memorial
in Windrush Square.
In Windrush Square. I had the honor of following you the next year and doing the libation in 2024. And I don't say this with certainty, yeah. But last year, that memorial was taken from the brother who had been organizing it for well over about a decade, I'm sure.
That's right.
Brother Nubian Jack. Yeah, Jack Bueller. He created it, yes, and has been taken over by the British Armed Forces and Lambeth Council and so on and so forth. And I can't say this for certain, Baba Gus, but I was asked to do the libation, and I was conflicted because I'm always conflicted about how we remember and memorialize African-Caribbean war veterans. Yeah, there's too much colonialism in our remembrance, and so I was wondering how. Right, and I was wondering how to deliver a purposeful libation that didn't fall into that trap. And so I watched your libation from the previous year, and my libation was kind of inspired by yours, but with a little bit more fire and brimstone in presentation, because I'm naturally that kind of individual, right? And I'm not sure about this, but I know that the British Armed Forces that were present were not happy with the libation, and it upset a few people that were there. So I'm relatively certain that it was a contributory factor. Yes,
I'm sure
to what happened last year with Jack Bueller, and reports that I've heard from people that know some things from behind the scenes would confirm that fact. And so I'm saying all of that to say that we need to, within the context of whatever campaign that we're doing, we need to place British African-Caribbean induction and regiments into the British war effort in the colonial context as a part of the colonial crime. Yes? Not to be celebrated as some kind of virtuous contribution to the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And we don't have time to get into this idea of contributionism today, because that's another thing. Like the best of the Windrush narrative puts our presence in the UK as in the context of the best that we can be and become are contributors to British society. And again, as you made the point earlier, that takes out the aspect of resistance, and rebellion and revolution. That if our primary goal is to be able to contribute to the British society, then we need to place African-Caribbean induction and regiments into the British war effort in the colonial context as a part of the colonial crime. Yes? Not to be celebrated as some kind of virtuous contribution to the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And we don't have time to get into this idea of contributionism today, because that's another thing. Like the best of the Windrush narrative puts our presence in the UK as in the context of the best that we can be and become are contributors to British society. And again, as you made the point earlier, that takes out the aspect of resistance and rebellion and revolution. That if our primary goal is being aspirational in terms of what it means to be British and contributing to British society, all of that stuff we negated for the sake of making a valuable contribution. And I'm saying that a part of it is being part of the story of our elders who fought in the British Armed Forces is being used to pacify the younger generation in terms of what Britain is and has been to us and our people and our ancestors.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And in passing, let us just remember that the British, that was supposed to be the sign of hope that this Patrick Vernon thing wants to associate the Windrush with. At the time, the British were conducting headhunting in Malaysia. They were committing genocide in Kenya. They were setting up the Central African Federation as a way of maintaining white rule over what are now 3 independent African countries, and so on. We didn't migrate to a benevolent place. We migrated to a place whose wickedness wasn't confined to enslavement or to retreating colonialism. It was actually defending colonialism in the late 40s and 50s, using genocide and headhunting and that kind of stuff all over the world.
That's right.
And that's
right.
Interesting you mentioned Malaysia. Elder Cecil, interesting you mentioned Malaysia because the Windrush itself was used to transport British troops to Malaysia during that period. Yeah? The actual ship Windrush. Yeah? So let's be clear about that.
They were the biggest part of the population of the Windrush that our people came back on. It actually had many more British soldiers returning from foreign parts on that voyage than were Caribbean people. Yeah. There were more than 1,000 of them on there.
Yes.
So
my elders, I want to wrap up now, and I know you've given me more than enough of your time for this evening. But be assured that I'm gonna do my best to reconvene and facilitate other platforms whereby you can share your wisdom. And we said both of you have said that we need some form of mass mobilization around the taking down of this formation, this foundation. And so we're gonna have to look at how to do that. And so I'm gonna put some heads together and see what we can do. You don't have to, but if there are any closing words, feel free to share them now.
But let me just say that I am encouraged, my brother, by your initiative to make this happen. I think it is timely, more than timely. It's long overdue. Yeah. And Brother Cecil would have heard me say before that I consider my role in this period, my 8th decade on this earth plane, as making available to your generation and people even younger than yourself the kind of insights, etc., that I have gained over the years, the results of analyzing Britain and its racism and hubris and all of that stuff, so that your generation and those coming after you are better equipped with knowledge, information and knowledge about our struggles, our successes and our defeats, so that you might chart a path for yourselves that's informed by all of that. Brother Cecil is of a similar age, and we have been on those journeys and can try and impart some knowledge and wisdom and help to give some direction to what it is that your generation and others are seeking to do, because inevitably you are much you are much the architects of Britain's future as anybody else. So in as much as I have strength and energy, and thank God that that is not failing, I would be more than happy to continue, facilitating and contributing to these grounding sessions, as I prefer to call them.
Absolutely. Oh, I've been hunting for the book, Elder Cecil. So please let us know when it's available. I was on the phone with representatives of New Beacon just today, trying to get the Don't Salvage the Empire Windrush. Yeah. So we're waiting for the reprint. We look forward to it.
Right.
And so yeah, please let us know, and we'll help to push it as well and use it as a part of our propaganda machine. Elder Cecil, I know you're not a big fan of closing words, but you have the opportunity.
No, let us say that I adopt everything that Brother Gus just said so elegantly and eloquently and truthfully, and our positions on this matter and on our lifetime in this place is fairly close. So I'm happy to adopt what he said.
Thank you very much, Baba Gus. I'm inspired to try and make an Ifa priest of Elder Cecil. What do you think?
It's a good job my hearing is all that good. I didn't hear what you just said. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm saying I'm trying to make I'm consulting with Baba Gus in terms of trying to make you a Yoruba priest of the Ifa tradition. I think you make a good one, Elder Cecil. So I'm asking what he thinks of this.
I respect African spirituality, but I've left it to Brother Gus and to your father and to the people who manage it. I'm not really a believer.
I understand. Brother Gus, at some point as well, we have to have a conversation about OBEs, and the fact that you refused yours. And what that means. I think those are stories that need to be more told as well.
He'd have got much more than that now if he was disposed. He'd have got a sir and a lordship already.
I'm certain of it. But at the rate that many of us are accepting them at the moment, I just feel like there needs to be more stories about those who have not. So at some point we'll have those discussions. You know what I'm saying? For now, my elders, thank you entirely. Thank you very much. And no doubt we'll have more work to do on this matter. So I appreciate you and all of your efforts. Be assured that there are those of us who are your children and grandchildren who respect you highly, and we'll do our best to make sure that your work lasts for generations to come. So thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you.
All right. And you too.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, brothers and sisters, that's been Baba Gus John, Baba Cecil Gutsmore. We are discussing the fallacy, the Windrush fallacy. And I just want to appreciate the Babas once again for their contribution to our conversation this evening. I hope that you all got something serious from it. If you did, let's have a Black Power fist in the chat. Let's put some Black Power fists in the chat for our elders, and we appreciate them. I want to put out the call again. We need to be hearing from our elders, yes, who would be considered in this so-called Windrush generation, especially with perspectives such as these. As much as we're being seduced into accepting this narrative as our own, as those who are first, second, and third generation in this country, we need to balance that significantly with a comprehensive understanding of the experiences of our elders and ancestors and their political trajectory. Bear in mind, brothers and sisters, that 3 years before the Windrush shelled in 1948, there was a Pan-African Congress, yes, in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And this is a fact that is very, very underappreciated and absent, as our elders were saying, the general Windrush narrative. And there's a reason for this. And that reason can be seen as manifested in the quote-unquote diaspora wars, which I refer to as the colonizers' diaspora wars that have been taking place all over social media in recent months. And those diaspora wars are facilitated by a fundamental lack of comprehensive understanding of our people's history in this country and the relationships that we've had, tensions as well as movements of unified purpose among Africans from the continent and African-Caribbean people. And so I hope that we've done made a small contribution to that conversation. And as has been said, we need to do more in terms of challenging this narrative, particularly between now and 2028. And so we will avail this platform for that purpose. So if you are the proprietor of a podcast and you would like to speak to Baba Gus John, Baba Cecil Gutsmore, please feel free to contact them directly or get in touch with me to help facilitate the thing. I am more than happy to do so. I'm happy to drive them there and take them back home. Yeah, anything that will help to facilitate the raising of these voices is necessary. I don't see enough elders on our podcast. Yeah, I don't see enough elders on our podcast. And there are many elders who have a lot of important things to say. And so very, very happy to facilitate that. Please, please, please get in touch with me. And with that, we say Tendam Wadi. We're thankful unto the Mother, Father, Creative Life Force of the Universe. Kudzai, Mwanzimo Mokolo. We give praises unto our great ancestors, Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Garvey lives, Messiah lives, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
If you're white, it's all right. If you're it no good to stay in a white man country too long. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. In the 50s, my mother, sister run go England. Now my mother gone America, she turn American. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. So you left Clarendon to go a Brixton, and you check the things cool in a Liverpool. But Dino Powell didn't know that things would get a blow. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. And I listen the news and I get confused. A black man join the Ku Klux Klan. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. It no good to stay in a white man country too long. If you're white, it's alright. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back, or you better attack. It's no good to stay in a white man country too long. It's no good to stay in a white man country too long. Now the fire I go burn and the blood I run. A time Big Ben really tumble down. And Ta say him a go burn a chalice. But me say him should have burned down the palace. It's no good to stay in a white man country too long. It's no good to stay in a white man country too long. Hear why? When you're there, you say, hey sir. When you go there, you say, hey mate, it's getting late. It's not good to stay in a white man country too long. It's no good to stay in a white man country too long. So them shoot Reagan, them shoot the Pope, them shoot after the Queen, and you take it for a joke. It's no good to stay in a white man country too long. It's no good to stay in in a white man country too long. Blacks in England, what is your plan? Blacks in England, check the time. Skinhead them now, check them crime. Blacks in England, find your land. Cause it no good to stay in a white man country too long. It no good to stay in a white man